back in the house of Jack. Today I want to talk about the cult of the innovators. The cult of personality versus the actual output of producers who rely heavily on that innovator tag to promote themselves in 2025. Now, I'm not here to take away from anyone's flowers or hate on anybody's accomplishments. This is just a rant about how I personally feel about techno music these days and marketing trends that seem to only widen the chasm between established artists and upcoming sort of new faces. Have you ever entered a remix contest or been offered a feature in exchange for money? Have you ever seen an offer to get a chance to get signed to a label as a part of a promotion? These strategies and loads of others are only there to foment the exploitation of aspiring beatmakers. These marketing techniques are designed to hone in on the latent imposter syndrome you feel inside. This is an imposter syndrome that can be traced back to the beginning of music as a commerce. And in techno, back to the early 90s when the Mythmaking of the Belleville 3 created the first ever American techno superstars, claiming that they had invented the genre after seeing Kraftwerk and becoming inspired. No UFOs by Model 500 was obviously quite inspired by the electro sounds of Kraftwerk, but it's hardly a prototypical techno track, as we all know what classic electro sounds like when we hear it. In fact, the Egyptian Lover had been making similar tracks on the East Coast even before the release of No UFOs, which is often credited to be somehow the first techno track. That reason again is called myth-making. Artist lore and legends are something carefully studied for centuries. The fact that somehow the world thinks Juan Atkins invented the term techno and applied it to these electro records goes against direct empirical evidence to the contrary. Now, I'm not going to get off into nitpicking about what the first techno track is, because then I'd have to bring up the Italians, and nobody in Detroit wants that. But what I want to do is talk today about the reason some of us feel like we have to earn the chance to get signed, and others just send off a zip to our friends with the label and see what sticks. If you look on the old people's website, aka Facebook, at any time of the day or night you can find innovators in their 40s, 50s, and 60s yearning for a time when information about music was held tight under a lock for which only a chosen few had the key. They want the good old days back, when only they were the digital shaman trying to take you on a journey. I mean, these so-called legends rant about how their craft has been lost and cry about the bar for entry to DJ culture being so low. Meanwhile, they complain that no good music has come out in the last 25 years. I mean, actually, we know there's so much good music coming out every week that it almost seems difficult to wade through it all. And it's detrimental to me, it seems detrimental to me anyway, to the legacy of an artist to play out that self-fulfilling prophecy of a bitter old man left by the music screaming into the void about how we did it first and everything went better in the good old days. Yet somehow, magically, we all go out of our way to pretend these people are still relevant. We hold them up as sacred cows, buying books and documentaries full of lies and half-truths. We buy t-shirts and even tickets to be down front row as a once respected innovator pantomimes with a disconnected keyboard. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we need to burn our heroes and the bridges that lead back to our roots. This would be entirely the opposite intended effect I hope my channel has on people. No, what I mean to say is that maybe now it's time to analyze the way we see the hierarchical, artistic pecking order we unquestionably accept into law as we fall into line. So how do we avoid this trap? How do we keep from getting played? Well, one way is to ask yourself that famous question Janet Jackson once asked the entire world. What have you done for me lately? A true innovator will have grown artistically. They won't be in the same place musically as they were 25 years ago. An innovator will be eager to show their work and not hide behind secrecy, acting like all of this is some sort of black magic coven to which you're not invited. A grifter depends on nostalgia. They'll rehash the same idea while giving interviews and becoming known more for off-stage antics than on-stage performance. They cultivate scams like the dreaded remix contest where they give you a chance to win a release on their legendary label. The remix contests are particularly annoying to me because they create a conscious barrier where we ourselves help to construct a wall between us and our dreams. When you enter these types of promotion, you're essentially saying, I'm an amateur, you're a professional, notice me senpai. It's the most visceral surrender I've ever seen to the cult of personality of the innovators. It's all very well and good to love and respect artists and the records they made years ago during the start of all of this. Just remember who you are and what you want. Don't go out of your way anymore to hold innovators to easier standards than you would an unknown artist having their first release. Take the nostalgia goggles off and listen. Really, just listen. I went back and played one of my most cherished video games recently, Half-Life 2. To me, it's always been the holy grail, and anybody talking bad about it was sacrilegious, you know? Well, after a recent replay, I can tell you it was wonderfully innovative at the time, but I really just don't enjoy playing it much these days. The antlions and the vehicles are a slog. I love the game and fully appreciate the before and after effect it had on gaming, but I just don't want to play it at home for fun. The nostalgia goggles are off, and I can't put them back on. This is just logical with the passage of time. So, while some keep the nostalgia going by coasting off past achievements, others would have you put those goggles back on only to experience a poor facsimile of a moment that never existed in time. This is where we get to the worst kind of worm in the nostalgia grift. The artist who's never made a track at all and does not even exist. The seller of lost recordings. This is a relatively new phenomena of the AI artist with a prefab backstory. One in particular was pointed out to me this morning. I don't want to direct traffic to their site or music, so I'm not going to mention any names. But this a white German, let's call him Jorg, and he's posing as an African-American fella from the second wave of Detroit. This person combined two existing names to make someone who didn't exist and used AI to make very low-quality songs that vaguely resemble Detroit techno. As a friend of mine put it, it just sounds like it has too many fingers. All the telltale signs of 100% AI-produced material are there. And for supposed vinyl rips, there are no audible crackles or static. This shit is 100% fake. Designed to make you think you missed out on a place and time in history that only Jorg from Frankfurt and the recordings on his Bandcamp can save you with. I mean, imagine it. Some of the actual North American pioneers are inspired by people in Europe in the early 80s to create their own scene and sound back home, and that leads to some Eurocunt in the 2020s pretending to be one of these pioneers and selling you shit on a shingle and telling you it's Knights of the fucking Jaguar. This is where we're at. Up is down and black is white. So what do we do to cut through the bullshit and support the authentic artists and labels who are doing this for all the right reasons? Well, the way we always have, by ear. Listen to music and feel it in your bones. If you like it and it moves you, that's good enough. If it inspires you to create something, go forth and create. Somebody told me a few years back over some shit talking to be the change I wanted to see in the world. And that sort of came off snotty to me at the time, but once I got over myself, I realized they were absolutely right. It's up to each and every one of us to be the change we want to see in the world, and that starts by giving everyone a clean slate, whether it's an old head from Detroit or a young fresh face from Serbia. What counts is the chops, and we all have to ask ourselves sooner or later, have I got the chops? Or am I going to play the sad clown, rehashing 40-year-old 12-inch singles and complaining on Facebook about the good old days? Me? I'm working on House of Jack LP number 2 like a motherfucker. And I can't wait to show you all what I've been working on. Anyway, remember, always wipe and stay off the pipe. And we'll see you next week on the House of Jack.